Hello, everybody. Welcome back to your Monday Morning Jumpstart. I feel like it could also be called Monday Morning like Reset, Ted, with all the topics that we have, right? It's like a little reset.
Yeah, I really do think we're very intentionally, because of the time of year, going
Yes.
back in the vault and pulling some things out. And you and I have both said it in the past. Like there's certain things that we're going to be unapologetically redundant about,
Yes.
because they need to resurface until we really catch rhythms about it.
So last week we talked about war, what's at risk, and almost like reanalyzing your outcomes and then talking about goals that fall under them.
Yeah.
Ted, you have something called a change curve. How does that play into it and what is it exactly?
Yeah, I just think that understanding when you're going to go try to create change in your life, being ready for what's coming, like
Mm,
psychologically understanding like this is what's going to happen so that we don't get totally wigged out. Like if you're anything like me, we're all human beings. Like we go to create change in our lives, and you hit certain parts of the change, and then all of a sudden you get wigged out, and that's a lot of times where we lose our mojo. And so I like to throw this out, particularly at this time of year, because everybody on micro levels, meaning individuals, and on macro levels, companies are going into 24 and they're going to try to change some stuff,
hmm
right? And understanding the psychology of change is just really important to, as I've often said, like expectations, the root of all heartache. Like if we know what to expect, we'll move through it. And so there's this thing called the change curve. It's not my thing. It's a thing that's out there. And if you imagine a snake, and the first thing is a hill, and then it goes down into a valley, and then it comes back to here. So we start here, we go up to the hill, and there's four kind of parts to the change curve. So the first is you identify, like we talked about last week, a change that you're going to make. Call it a goal, say whatever it is, and you identify what the change is, and you're pretty excited. So before we said the gym was going to be empty, like you said last week, people came into 2024 guns blazing, ready to go, very optimistic.
hmm
They're going to go change some things. And on the change curve, that's the top of the first peak, and we call that uninformed optimism.
Gotcha. Okay, now I'm with you.
You remember this now.
Yes, I'm with
We
you.
call it uninformed optimism, and only uninformed only because you're just starting. You don't know what it's really going to take. So I'm gonna use your example of the people that flooded the gym and wanted to go into it. And I'm somebody that's very consistent over the last 25 years in the gym. There's a lot to that change in lifestyle and adopting that lifestyle. But if you've not done it before, you don't realize what it's really going to feel like. And I'm going to use my state in Maryland at 6 o'clock in the morning in February. It's freezing.
But any
It's
time of
sleeting
day,
outside.
even. Yeah,
Yeah,
right? Like no matter when you have to do all
whenever,
the layers and yeah, like what it's
and you
really
have
like
to
to go
go
to
to the
gym
gym,
in winter.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
And guess what? You can't just stop on the way home from work and pick up food all the
Yeah.
time anymore. Like there's all these things, but before you really get into it, you don't know how hard it's going to be to exist. So you're uninformed optimism. That's what we call the first
My
segment.
favorite part, my favorite state.
Everybody's. And then you start going down the curve. So you go up the hill, then you start coming down the curve, and you hit this middle piece that we call informed pessimism. Informed pessimism. So you said last week we're about a month into the year. There are a lot of people that have reached that stage in the change. Informed pessimism. I know what it feels like, and guess what? I'm questioning whether I want to continue to go forward.
hmm
Right?
hmm
I'm questioning. So now we get into mid-February, which is what I've always stated. Like by Valentine's Day is my metric. The gym starts to get to a place where I want to go back into it because not everything's being used and people aren't standing around every piece of machinery talking and et cetera. When we get down to that third phase we call crisis of meaning, which basically is this is the decision point. We draw a dotted line down from that, and you can either crash and burn, quit. To your point last week, you will either quit or you will start to travel up the curve, which this last segment is what I always pause and say, if you create change in your life, here
It's where it lives.
is where change, here is where resolve comes in. Here's where if you go back to do what we talked about last week, check back in, was the meaning deep enough? And if you go, you know what, I can't not, I'm going to go back to what I said last week. I can't not spend $500 a month to have more. Why? Because I need my boys to be rooted in family. So, so whatever that is, this segment then leads you to the top of the curve that is called informed optimism. Because now you know what it feels like to live a consistently healthy life. And you're like, I got this. I can do this because now it's part of my lifestyle. It's part of my rhythm. Here's why I like to propose this. This is really what happens to people. Like, it's not always to the exact, right?
Yeah.
But if you can think back in your life of times where you hit a wall and when you speak to that crisis of meaning or informed pessimism, we've all been there.
Yeah.
The question is if you can slow down and go, did I work my way through it? Did I check in? Sometimes it's appropriate to abandon a goal
I was
because
going
we
to ask
realize
you that. Yes, it's not crashing and burning. It's sometimes you need to.
no,
Yeah.
sometimes it's appropriate to abandon a goal. And I want everybody to hear that loud and clear, because not only in personal, but in business, sometimes we came up with the wrong stuff.
Yes.
And
Yes.
maybe we're realizing that the fight is not worth what we're putting into it. And it's appropriate to abandon. Now, also, what we'll realize through thought, slow down, and introspection is that sometimes if you fight through and you look back at your life, when you fought through crisis of meaning, this is where true change happened in your life. You go, oh my God, man. When I got to that informed optimism, I worked my way through certain things. And so I just want people to pause and go, okay, this is normal, is the way I like to say it. Like, you're going to go through this and it's normal to be questioning, that crisis of meaning spot.
Well, I always go just a touch more woo-woo than Ted. So I'm going to say, like, I resonate with what you're saying so deeply, and this is how it feels for me. So maybe it'll feel like this for somebody else. With that wall that you're talking about, when I hit it, I always feel like whenever you're at the edge of something really big or really like life-changing, there's always a resistance, right? It's always where you meet the most resistance at the end that makes it the most difficult to move through, to go up. Like, that hill at the end is the steepest, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I always feel that. But at the same time, at that point, I always will question, is this resistance because I need to get through and it's going to be worth the change at the end? Or is this protection?
Yeah.
Is this something that is protecting me, that's why this has stopped, because I should not be doing this thing, right? And it's almost like a reevaluation point of like, no, this is going to be worth it. I need to spend the $500 on the program or my family or whatever to get to that goal. Or no, you know what, right now is not really the time that I have it. Let's go to the park rather, or let's use free resources than spending that money. You know what I mean? So when you feel that, I do think, and Ted, you are an advocate for checking in all the time. It's such a good place to stop, pause, and look around and feel. And no matter which way it goes, be aware and
You're
don't
nailing
stop, but yeah.
You're nailing it. I mean, you're taking us to the deeper end of the pool. I mean, we could go for another 30 minutes now because of what you're bringing up, but you're bringing up the truth, which is, if you are introspective in the spot that we're asking you to be today, you will find out that oftentimes you're false protecting yourself.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And when you're talking about this is the deeper end of the pool, because we all do this. We think we're protecting ourselves doing certain things, and we're actually going against the grain. But you could say, hey, I'm going to make a $25,000 goal this year. You're not going to make a $50,000 goal. And essentially, you're doing what Jade just talked about. I don't want you to way overshoot, but I also don't. And that's that insecure. You're protecting yourself from not hitting 50,000 because you don't want to feel like a loser. So therefore, you're not going to go and do that. So
Yeah.
you're nailing it. I don't want to go to the gym because all eyes will be on me.
Yep. And you know what's so funny is, last week when we talked about outcomes and
Very
goals,
good.
there's so many ways to get to the outcome. You don't have to go to the gym to lose weight. Like,
True.
I work out at home. You know what I mean? Not that my goal is to lose weight, but in any case, I work out at home, And so that line can also get like a pivot point of like, maybe I still have the same outcome, but the way in which I approach it now needs to change, right? But we're still getting to that end place that we want to get to. It might just be a place of pivoting, but yeah. I love it. This is my jam. I love this, because once you get to that, I feel like even if you don't follow through, but you've done it with awareness, if you either that happens or if you get to that top peak, life changes and you are able to recreate that so many more times, right? And your
Yeah.
success and that curve happens
Yeah.
so much quicker, don't you feel like? More frequently, quicker,
I
and
agree.
easier to move through.
Yeah, the last point I'll make on this, to your point, is that crisis of meaning. I think most people look at that and go, I want to avoid that, the bottom of
Mm,
and it's interesting, as I've lived through life, before I was even introduced to the change curve, probably only like 7 or 8 years ago, it just resonated with me. But I used to say to my clients, true change happens at the bottom of the well. And I think about my own life, like the tragedies and the hardships in my life, not all of them, but some of them were absolutely pinnacle. It
yeah.
forced true change, right?
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes. So
so
true.
it's very true. So we can't avoid that.
But I mean, today's not really a homework thing, maybe just like an awareness thing, right? Of
It's
while you're
totally
going through.
awareness. It's totally
Yeah.
awareness. Like, this is like, you're going to go on this journey this year, and you're going to feel some of what we spoke about today. And in those moments, I don't want you to wig out.
Yeah.
I want you to go normal. I'm human. I'm
Yeah.
normal. I'm
This is what
normal. I'm
this
not
is what
some
happens to
loser.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what happens. Yeah.
I love it. Well, next week is a slight pivot, but all in the
All
same
in the same
tone.
bucket. Yeah.
Yes, all in the same tone. So we're going to talk a little bit about celebrations, and we shall see everybody then. Thank you, Ted.
See you guys. Take care.